Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tuấn. I'm a PhD student at the Department of Education, National Taiwan Normal University. Today, I will introduce the educational system in Vietnam. My presentation today includes four parts: history of educational department in Vietnam, structure of Vietnam educational system, educational reform, and some challenges in educational reform. For our educational histories, the Vietnamese feudal education system was organized according to the ancient Chinese models. Confucian tradition, long traditions of commitment to learning as a part of the Confucian cultural heritage. Confucian examination system and the last Confucian examinations were conducted in 1919. Moving to the French colonial education in the early 19th century, an emerging Franco-Vietnamese education system was supported by French colonial authorities, and we have two systems: French school system and French Vietnamese school system, attended by only Vietnamese children. And for the post-colonial education after 1945. In the period of the August 1945 revolution until the independence in 1956, the 5 years compulsory education system, primary education 4 years, secondary education 3 years, and upper secondary education 4 years. The universal education as well, and expanded to include professional and university education. And in the part of the post independent until unification 1956 and 1975. The Soviet Union influenced Vietnam's national education system, and also the United States had a significant impact on the education system in South Vietnam in the periods of 1960 and 1975. In the periods of unification education reform from 1976 to the present, so the education system was expanded to include 12 years of general education, and also the Soviet education model was applied uniformly across the entire countries, and the universal education for the whole population. And the state authorities waited until 1981 to adopt a unified national education system. Currently, primary education is free for all children in public schools, and compulsory education is required through the end of lower secondary school. Moving to Vietnam's education system structure. According to Educational Law 2005, the Vietnamese education system aims to solve three major tasks: improving the people's knowledge, training human resources, and nurturing talent. For Vietnam education system structure, so we can see in the picture There are two tracks of education system in Vietnam. The first one is academic system, and the second one is technical and vocational system. In the academic system, so education start at the primary education, move to primary education, lower secondary education, upper secondary education, university, and postgraduate education. For technical and vocational system, so we can see uh, after graduating from lower secondary school, a student they can study short-term vocational training, or they will study vocational training within 1 or 2 years to get the level 2 skilled workers, and after that they can study at the junior college to get the level 3 skilled worker certificates. However, for students who graduate from upper secondary education, so after that they can join in technical, technological, specialist skills university to get bachelor degrees, and they can study more at the level of postgraduate education, or they uh, can study at the junior college to get the level 3 skilled worker certificate. For early childhood education, in the midst of 1990s, Vietnam national system of education was divided into a four-tier system. This system consists of preschool education, general education, vocational education, and higher education. In early childhood education, so the early childhood education sector includes nurseries for children aged 3 months to 36 months, and kindergartens for children aged 3 years to 6 years. By 2019, about 99.6% of the on 5-year-olds participated in kindergarten classes achieved a universal participation by 5-year-olds in kindergarten. In 2019 and 2020, private providers increased the key roles in early childhood education, which accounted for 40% of nursery enrollments and 7% of kindergarten enrollments. For general education, includes primary education from grade 1 to grade 5 is compulsory for all children. And in 2019 and 2020, private sector only accounted for only 1.4% of on primary school enrollments. And for lower secondary schools, from grade 6 to grade 9, is compulsory to attend. And in 2019-2020, private sector only accounted for only 1.4% of on primary school enrollments. And for upper secondary education from grade 10 to grade 12 is selective. And in 2019-2020, non-publics include private upper secondary schools accounted for only 9% of on upper secondary school enrollment. For the vocational education and training sector has three levels: vocational colleges, upper secondary schools, and training centers managed by the General Department of Vocational Training, a department of the Ministry of Labor, Invalid and Social Affairs. Elementary training at a vocational secondary school from 3 months to under 1 year. Intermediate training at a vocational secondary school from 1 year to 2 years. Higher education at a vocational college 3 years to 4 years. For higher education, so laws on higher education as revised in 2018 and law on education revised in 2019 was a very important legal requirement impacting on higher education. In 2019 and 2020, there was over 1.6 million students in the sector, most 90.5% of whom were enrolled in full-time bachelor programs. Only 18.7% of all enrollments were in private university, and there were 237 universities, including 172 public universities and only 65 private universities. For educational reform in Vietnam, Vietnam has gone through 5 waves of education reform in the last several decades. In the first wave, which lasted roughly from 1945 to 1954, Vietnamese education reforms were framed around fighting poverty and illiteracy. And the second wave of reform took place during the Vietnam War, concentrating on expanding the school networks and to establish modern universities. After the end of the war in 1975, the third major educational reform focused on curriculum unification between the North and the South of the countries. In 1980s, new textbooks for all grades over the countries were available. The fourth wave of reform began in 1986 with the passage of the major national reform, namely đổi mới. The biggest achievement was the general expansion of universal education within the first 9 years of the reform. Higher education also witnessed a period of growth, with the number of post-secondary students tripling from 1998 to 2011. In 2008, Vietnam's government declared that primary education had been universalized. By 2010, the government aims to universalize lower secondary education. In 2013, the Revolution 29 were released as one of the most significant pieces of education legislation in the country's history. The fifth wave focused on the fundamental and comprehensive education reform that puts the development of Vietnam education system at the top of socio-economic development plans of the country. And in PISA achievement in 2012 and 2015, our countries get Arkansas got the top positions in the PISA average score ranking and international academic competitions. And for general education curriculum reform in 2018, so we can see the general education curriculum reform focus on competency-based education. Currently, general education curriculum was first launched in 2006, and the new general education curriculum aims to develop five main qualities, including patriotism, compassion, diligence, honesty, and responsibilities, and 10 core competencies for students, including autonomy and self-learning, communication and collaboration, problem solving and creativity, language, calculation, science, technologies, computing, aesthetic, and physics. 2018 general education curriculum is implemented in two phases: basic education from grade 1 to grade 9 and career-oriented education from grade 10 to grade 12, including compulsory subjects and activities, selective career-oriented subjects, and elective subjects. There are many textbook sets with 13 subjects. For some challenges in educational reform, so many teacher supplies and teaching qualities, the policies of socialization as the basics for attracting private investment, and also reliance on traditional student assessment practices. Education assessment is too heavily focused on results rather than processes. And qualities of educational provision for young people in ethnic minority groups. Large class size present many challenges for teachers and educators in terms of uh, delivering lessons and conducting educational activities. And, and finally, pedagogies and teachers' professional development are under-resources, as well as educational management with decentralization of spending autonomies being ineffective in Vietnam. So that's on my presentation today. Thank you for your paying attention.